The problem wasn't the perception. It was the man behind it. Sloan Mercer arrived 5 minutes late on purpose. Late enough to shift the power in the room without disrespect. The executive floor of Kang Global Industries sat high above the Han River, glass and steel cutting a sharp line against the Seoul skyline. The reception area was quiet in the way only expensive spaces ever were. Soft lighting, polished stone, staff trained to lower their voices automatically. Every person on this floor already knew who she was. That was the point. Sloan didn't rush. She didn't apologize. She accepted the visitor badge and walked toward the boardroom doors with the calm of someone who had done this for heads of state, legacy CEOs, and companies that survived scandals by the skin of their teeth. A woman in a tailored black suit opened the door for her. The conversation inside stopped. Not dramatically, just enough. Sloan clocked it immediately. A long, polished table. A dozen executives, legal counsel, PR leads, investor relations, 2 board members seated near the head, faces tight, shoulders tense, and him. Kang Min-jae sat at the far end of the table. Tall even while seated. Broad shoulders filling out a charcoal suit tailored to precision. His hair was slicked back, styled with deliberate control. Dark eyes, sharp jaw, a face built for authority, not warmth. The room bent around him. People leaned subtly away. Voices softened near him. Eyes flicked in his direction before anyone spoke. The tension in the room was controlled, not chaotic. Sloan didn't react to it. She walked in, set her leather portfolio on the table, and took the empty chair that had clearly been held for her. She didn't wait to be introduced. "Let's get started," she said, tone sharp but professional. "I have another client briefing in 3 hours, so I want to be efficient." A few heads turned. Someone inhaled sharply. Min-jae's gaze stayed on her, assessing. Sloan opened her portfolio and slid a tablet out, already bringing up files. "You hired me to stabilize your external narrative," she continued. "Your reputation profile is now actively costing you money. Partnerships have stalled. 2 major international firms have paused negotiations. Investor sentiment is trending down." She tapped the screen. A graph appeared on the wall display. "This isn't about a single headline. It's about a pattern. You're being positioned publicly as a hostile operator. Aggressive acquisitions, ruthless restructuring, a leadership style that reads as volatile." She finally looked up at him. Direct, professional, unmoved. That story becomes harder to control the longer it sits. One of the board members cleared his throat. "Ms. Mercer, we understand your firm's reputation, but..." Sloan held up a single finger, polite and absolute. "Let me finish," she said evenly. "You brought me in to manage perception. That requires plain language." The room went quiet again. Min-jae didn't interrupt. That told her everything she needed to know. She continued. "This is not a legal problem. This is a trust problem. Global partners want stability. They want predictability. Right now, your brand reads as efficient and dangerous. That combination plays well in some rooms, not in the rooms you want access to next." She shifted the screen. "A controlled repositioning solves that. Limited access, curated leadership appearances. Strategic philanthropy aligned with long-term infrastructure, not flashy optics. A narrative shift toward disciplined growth." Her eyes stayed on him. "You will not like parts of this." The faintest flicker crossed his expression. Not irritation, recognition. "Most people in this room are afraid of you," Sloan said evenly. "That fear leaks into how they speak, how they posture, how they manage you. The market picks up on that. Investors read it. So do your competitors." A few executives shifted in their chairs. Min-jae leaned back slightly, still watching her. "My job is to make you readable as steady," Sloan continued. "That means changes, access changes, messaging changes, how you're experienced in a room changes." She clicked to the next slide. "This only works if I control the narrative completely." Min-jae's voice cut in for the first time, low, even, controlled. "And if I don't agree?" Sloan met his gaze without hesitation. "Then you wasted your money." Silence followed. Not awkward, charged. Sloan held his eyes unblinking. She didn't care that he was feared. She didn't care that his presence bent rooms. She cared about results. Min-jae studied her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. "Continue." Respect wasn't something he gave lightly. She could tell. Sloan felt it in the smallest ways. Shoulders squared, pens stopped tapping. Eyes shifted from Min-jae to her. recalibrating where authority now sat in the conversation. That was always the moment she looked for, when a room realized power had more than one source. Min-jae didn't move. His posture stayed relaxed, but his attention sharpened. She could see it in the stillness of him. Men like him didn't fidget, they went quiet when they were measuring something worth measuring. Her. Your current public profile is too narrow, Sloane continued. Right now, you're defined by outcomes only, acquisitions, closures, market dominance. That creates a one-dimensional narrative. She flicked to the next slide. You need dimension. Controlled access to leadership conversations, a limited number of long-form interviews, appearances where you're positioned as strategic, not predatory. One of the executives spoke up. We've tried that, he doesn't. Min-jae lifted one hand. The executive stopped mid-sentence. Sloane noticed. So did everyone else. You haven't tried it with someone controlling the framing from the inside out, Sloane said calmly. That's the distinction. Min-jae's gaze never left her face. You're confident. I'm selective, Sloane replied. There's a difference. A flicker of something passed through his eyes. Interest, she continued. This only works if I have full access, communications, scheduling logic, internal risk factors that could affect optics. I don't manage surprises. If something exists that could change how you're perceived, I need to know about it before it becomes public. That was as close as she came to drawing a hard professional line. The board members exchanged looks. Legal counsel shifted, clearly preparing to speak. Min-jae spoke first. You'll have full transparency. Sloane inclined her head once. She accepted it for what it was. Good. Then we move fast. Your next quarter earnings call is already being framed through this lens. We'll reposition ahead of that. She outlined timelines. Messaging changes. Appearances to cancel. Appearances to create. She didn't ask permission. She gave instructions. And Min-jae let her, because he recognized competence. As the meeting wrapped, executives filed out in clusters. Voices stayed low. Tension stayed high. Sloane gathered her tablet and portfolio. Min-jae remained seated. Ms. Mercer. She paused and turned back to him. Yes, you're not intimidated. Sloane considered him for half a second. Intimidation isn't data. A corner of his mouth shifted, not a smile. Something closer to approval. You don't behave like most consultants. I don't work like most consultants. Another beat of silence passed between them, dense, measured. Your reputation precedes you, he said. So does yours. His gaze sharpened. You don't seem concerned. I'm concerned with outcomes, Sloane replied. Fear doesn't improve strategy. Min-jae stood. Up close, his presence was heavier. Broader shoulders, the kind of height that forced people to tilt their chins. His suit fit like it was cut around muscle, not fabric. She didn't step back, he noticed. That, more than anything, sealed his respect. We'll begin immediately, he said. Good, Sloane replied. My team will coordinate with yours. She turned to leave. Behind her, his voice followed. And Ms. Mercer. She looked back. If this works, he said, it should guarantee how I'm seen. That's the point, she said calmly. If it didn't, you wouldn't have hired me. She walked out without waiting for dismissal. Outside the boardroom, her phone vibrated. A message from her deputy. Sloane typed back as she walked. She stepped into the elevator. The doors slid shut. Only then did she allow herself a slow exhale. This was a complicated client, a powerful one. Those were always the most interesting. In his office, Min-jae remained standing long after she left. His head of security appeared silently near the doorway. She's different, the man said. Min-jae didn't look at him. She's not afraid, that can be dangerous. Min-jae finally turned. Or useful. He walked to the window, looking out over Seoul. For the first time in a long time, someone had walked into his space and treated him like a problem to be solved. Not a force to be feared. Not a man to be impressed. A variable. And that, more than anything, made her dangerous in a way he respected. 3 days changed the rhythm. Sloane's team had taken over an entire floor of a discreet building in Gangnam. Temporary, secure, efficient. Her people moved fast. Media monitoring, narrative mapping, stakeholder analysis, internal comms review. Kang Global's leadership had learned quickly that when Sloane Mercer was on a case, the pace shifted. Pushback came in layers. Legal slowed document flow. Operations delayed access. Communications filtered what they sent. Sloane clocked every hesitation. She didn't escalate emotionally. She escalated strategically. By the third day, a quiet meeting request came directly from Min Jae's office. No board, just him. The private executive conference room overlooked the river. Glass walls, minimal design, power without ornament. Min Jae was already there when she arrived, standing, jacket off, shirt sleeves rolled to his forearms. The visual was deliberate. He looked approachable. Sloane took in the change without comment. "You wanted to see me," she said. "Yes." He gestured to the table. "Sit." She did. "This process moves slower than I prefer," Sloane said. "My team is still waiting on full operational visibility. Some departments are resistant," he replied. "That's predictable. Resistance exists for a reason." Sloane met his gaze. "Then the reason is now part of the narrative risk." He studied her for a long moment. "You press hard, I press correctly. A beat passed. Your reputation suggests you walk away from clients who restrict you," he said. "I do." "Why haven't you walked away from me?" Min Jae asked. "Because the risk profile here is worth the effort," Sloane replied. "And because you're capable of decisive action." That earned another flicker of something in his eyes. Approval. Respect. "You think I'm the bottleneck?" he said. "I think you're the solution," she answered. He stepped closer, direct, efficient. Silence stretched between them. Not awkward, deliberate. "What happens if you uncover something you don't like?" he asked. Sloane didn't blink. "Then we adjust for it, quietly or publicly, depends on exposure. You assume you'll be allowed to adjust." "I don't assume," she said. "I contract for it." A corner of his mouth lifted again. "You're expensive," he said. "Good fixers are." Another pause. "Your team will receive broader access," Min Jae said. "Certain divisions will open their reporting." Sloane inclined her head. "That's workable. Certain areas will remain restricted. That will limit my effectiveness. It will limit your visibility," he corrected, "not your effectiveness." Sloane studied him now. That was the first time he'd said something that didn't fit cleanly into corporate logic. "Visibility affects outcomes," she said. "In my world," he replied. Quietly, "It also affects safety." The words hit differently. Sloane noted it and moved on. "Then we'll work within your structure," she said. "But understand this. Anything that surfaces later that I haven't seen first makes my job harder." Min Jae held her gaze. Understood. Whether it was true or not remained to be seen. As she stood to leave, he spoke again. "You don't seem curious about me." Sloane paused at the door. "I'm curious about results," she said. "People reveal themselves through execution." His eyes followed her. "That makes you difficult to mislead." "That's the idea." She left without another word. Outside, Seoul moved at full speed. Traffic, voices, glass and steel and momentum. Sloane walked into it with the calm of someone who understood systems. She didn't know yet what lived beneath his, only that it was deeper than a corporate hierarchy, and that meant the work ahead would be more complicated than most. The next day, the television studio was neutral by design. Warm lighting, clean backdrop. A skyline shot framed to suggest authority without arrogance, the kind of setup meant to soften edges without making it obvious. Sloane stood just off camera, tablet in hand, headset clipped discreetly behind one ear. Her team moved quietly around her, adjusting lights, checking sound, confirming timing. Min Jae sat in the chair, jacket back on, posture relaxed but deliberate. He looked like exactly what the public expected. Controlled, powerful, untouchable. Sloane didn't want untouchable, she wanted readable. She stepped closer to him before they went live. "My role is to make decisions that protect the long-term health of the company." Sloane's fingers moved across her tablet. "Good." The interviewer pressed. "Some would argue your methods leave little room for collaboration." Min Jae shifted slightly in his chair. Sloane lifted one finger. "Reframe. Strong collaboration depends on trust," he said. "Trust depends on consistency. My approach ensures our partners know exactly where we stand." Sloane allowed herself a small internal approval. He was learning fast. The interviewer tried again. "There are concerns about how smaller firms are affected by your expansion." Min Jae held steady. "Every acquisition comes with responsibility. We invest in continuity. We invest in people. Our goal isn't to erase companies. It's to strengthen systems." That answer wasn't in her notes. It was better. Sloane's gaze sharpened. He wasn't just following instructions, he was adapting. That made him more dangerous. and more effective. Between segments, Sloane stepped closer again. "That last answer," she said quietly, "that was good. You didn't write it." "I would have," she replied, "eventually." His eyes held hers for a second longer than necessary. "Then perhaps you're improving me." "I'm refining your edges," Sloane said. "You're doing the rest." The producer called for final segment. The rest of the interview flowed clean. "Short answers," she said quietly. "Measured. No corporate jargon. Let them see restraint, not dominance." His eyes flicked to hers. "You're managing my tone." "I'm managing perception," Sloane replied. "Your tone is part of it." He accepted that without comment. She continued. "If they ask about acquisitions, speak to long-term stability. If they ask about restructuring, emphasize continuity. Don't frame anything as a win, frame it as responsibility." He studied her for a beat. "You think I come across as someone who enjoys pressure. You come across as someone who applies it," she said. "That's different." Another quiet acknowledgement passed between them. The producer gave a 2-minute warning. Sloane leaned in slightly. "One more thing. If they try to provoke you with hostile framing, don't correct them. Reframe them." "How?" "By answering the question they should have asked." That finally earned her a real look from him. "You do this often, for people with less patience than you," she said, "and far more fragile egos." A corner of his mouth shifted, not a smile, but close. The cameras rolled. The interviewer, a respected international business journalist, opened with soft framing. "Mr. Kang, your company has grown aggressively over the past 5 years. Some critics describe your leadership as uncompromising." Min-jae didn't react. Sloane watched his breathing, his posture, the timing of his pause. He glanced toward her position without turning his head, a subtle check-in. She gave a single nod. "I believe growth requires clarity," he said evenly. "Clarity about goals, clarity about responsibility. Measured, controlled, humanized." When the cameras cut, the room released a breath. The journalist shook Min-jae's hand. "That was one of your strongest appearances." Sloane watched how he accepted the compliment. No ego, no deflection, just a nod. Outside the studio, Sloane walked beside him toward the private elevator. "That went well," he said. "It went where it needed to," she replied. "The market will respond." "You sound confident." "I track response patterns. This will land." They reached the elevator. The doors slid open. Before stepping inside, Min-jae paused. "You control rooms," he said quietly, "not by force." "Force is inefficient," Sloane replied. "People move better when they think it's their idea." The elevator doors closed. For a moment, the space felt smaller, not uncomfortable, charged. "You don't seem to fear consequences," he said. "I manage them," she answered. That was the truest thing she'd said all day. The industry summit was louder than the studio. More people, cameras, politics, a luxury hotel ballroom filled with executives, investors, and international press. Translation headsets, branded backdrops, the kind of environment where every movement was read and remembered. Sloane stood near the edge of the stage, phone in hand, eyes scanning the room. Min-jae was scheduled for a keynote and a moderated panel, 2 chances to shape him in one day. She had built the talking points carefully, not soft, not aggressive, strategic. She stepped into his space just before he went on. "Short story framing," she said quietly. "They want a villain narrative. You give them a builder narrative." He adjusted his cufflinks. "And if they push, they will," Sloane said. "Let them. You stay disciplined." He studied her face. "You trust your read on this room." "I trust patterns," she replied. "This room wants certainty. Give them that." He nodded once. On stage, he became exactly what she designed. Measured, strategic, forward-facing. She watched him field questions about expansion, labor concerns, long-term infrastructure, cross-border partnerships. Each time, he anchored his answers to continuity and responsibility. The room responded. She could feel it. Energy softened, postures shifted, interest replaced suspicion. During the panel, one executive challenged him openly. "Your company's growth pace has been described as disruptive to traditional markets. How do you respond to critics who say you destabilize more than you build?" Sloane's gaze sharpened. Min-jae didn't hesitate. "Disruption without direction is chaos," he said. "What we do is deliberate. We build systems that outlast headlines." A ripple of approval moved through the room. Sloane allowed herself a small internal nod. He wasn't just following her structure anymore, he was owning it. Afterward, backstage, a senior partner from a European firm approached. "Your performance today was different," the man said, more grounded. Min-jae glanced briefly toward Sloane. "Good strategy," the partner added. Sloane stepped forward before Min-jae could respond. "Clarity attracts better partnerships," she said calmly. "That's what you're seeing." The partner smiled. "Then I look forward to future discussions." As he walked away, Min-jae turned to her. "You speak for me easily. I speak for outcomes," Sloane replied. "You benefit from them." That wasn't a criticism. I didn't take it as one. The corner of his mouth shifted again. Back at Sloane's temporary office, the rhythm shifted. Her team uploaded internal materials for narrative mapping, subsidiary reports, operational summaries, regional activity logs, nothing explosive, just uneven. Sloane stood at the glass wall, tablet in hand, eyes narrowing slightly as she scrolled, volumes that didn't quite align with stated business needs, routing that felt unnecessarily complex, entities listed in ways that didn't match public-facing structure. It was pattern friction, the kind that made a fixer pause. Her deputy stepped beside her. "Anything?" "Maybe," Sloane said. "Flag these for deeper cross-check. Think it's a problem? I think it's something I should understand before someone else does." That was her rule. Preparation. She tagged the files. Nothing alarming, just worth knowing. Narrative control required awareness. Across the city, in Min-jae's penthouse, his operations chief spoke quietly. "She's effective," the man said. "She's precise," Min-jae replied. Planning to attend. She didn't request a meeting with Min-jae. She decided to see him directly. His schedule showed him off-site that evening. Private venue listed on his calendar, not a public-facing appearance. Sloane noted the location, a members-only club near the river. Discreet, high-end, the kind of place where business happened outside boardrooms. From her perspective, it made sense. If she needed clarity, she went to the person who could give it. She gathered her things, sent one final note to her team, and left her office with the calm of someone solving a work problem. On the drive, her thoughts stayed anchored in narrative structure. If this material existed, it meant one of two things. Either it had been overlooked, or it had been filtered. Neither option worked for her. Her reputation was built on control of information flow, not control in the sense of hiding things, control in the sense of knowing what existed so nothing blindsided her. That was the standard. That was why people paid her. If Min-jae wanted a controlled repositioning, she needed total transparency into anything that could touch perception. That was the conversation she intended to have. Professional, direct, clean. The club entrance was understated. No signage, no crowd. Just a quiet exchange at the door and a smooth transition inside. The interior was dim, elegant, designed for privacy. Low lighting, private seating areas. The kind of place where deals happened without paper trails. Sloane gave her name. She was escorted without delay. Sloane became aware of the room before she consciously registered it. She's also starting to see edges. Min-jae's gaze stayed on the skyline. She sees patterns. That's why she's here. That can become a complication. It can also become an advantage, Min-jae said. Silence stretched. She hasn't crossed any lines, the chief added. No, Min-jae said. She's doing her job. That was true. What neither of them said out loud was that in Min-jae's world, competence like hers had a way of opening doors that were never meant to be visible. Not yet. The next day. The file stayed open longer than it needed to. Because it was incomplete. Sloane sat at her desk long after most of her team had cleared out, the city lights outside her window reflecting faintly off the glass. Her tablet glowed with layered reports, operational summaries, regional activity logs, movement records tied to subsidiaries that rarely appeared in public-facing material. None of it screamed scandal. What it did suggest was something simpler and more frustrating. She wasn't seeing everything. From a fixer's standpoint, that mattered more than intent. Partial visibility meant partial control. Partial control meant exposure. She cross-checked timeframes. The volumes didn't align cleanly with the narrative she was building. The structure of certain operations suggested activity that never appeared in investor-facing disclosures. It didn't mean wrongdoing. It did mean the story had edges she hadn't been shown. That violated her professional standard. Sloane leaned back in her chair, fingers steepled briefly in thought. This wasn't about confrontation. It was about alignment. If information like this surfaced without her having seen it first, it would shift how the public story sounded. Even small changes could ripple. Headlines didn't care about context, they cared about contrast. And contrast was exactly what she was trying to control. She sent 2 quiet messages, one to her deputy, asking for a deeper cross-check, one to her assistant, canceling a dinner she'd been. The people. Men seated in private sections, conversations carried in low tones, glances that lasted a second too long before looking away, the kind of presence that didn't belong to casual business, power that didn't advertise itself. She felt it the way she always did. Rooms like this had gravity. Min Jae was seated in a private area toward the back. 2 men stood nearby, positioned in a way that read as awareness rather than display. He looked up when she approached, no surprise. Only calculation. "Ms. Mercer," he said, "this wasn't on my calendar." "Doesn't matter," Sloane replied. "I need clarity now." She took the seat across from him without waiting for invitation. Her posture stayed relaxed, her tone stayed level. "I was clear that I don't manage surprises," she said, "and this qualifies. Documents crossed my desk today that don't align with what I've been given so far." Min Jae's gaze stayed on her face, attentive, alert. "I can't manage perception around information I don't have," Sloane continued. "If something exists that could shift how your narrative sounds, I need to see it before it becomes someone else's leverage." That was the principle. Not accusation. Professional standard. Min Jae didn't answer immediately. He studied her the way he had the first day. Assessing. "You don't understand what you've done by coming here," Min Jae said, his eyes unreadable. Min Jae's gaze shifted briefly past her shoulder, to how the room was watching. Not openly, not obviously, but enough. "I'm doing my job," she said calmly. "When I need answers, I go where my client is." Her tone stayed all business. Min Jae leaned back slightly. His posture changed just enough to signal a decision. "You're being seen here," Min Jae said. "In my world. Your world." Sloane replied evenly. "Of course being seen here. I'm sitting across from you." She felt the shift before she fully named it. Min Jae's voice remained controlled. "This conversation needs a door." "Fine," she said. "Then we finish it properly." A flicker crossed his expression. Calculation layered with something closer to concern. He rose from his seat. The men nearby adjusted subtly. The room followed. Sloane noticed. This time, she really noticed. Min Jae extended his hand. "Come with me," he said. Sloane hesitated for half a second. Then she stood. The penthouse felt removed from the rest of the city, not in a showy way, in a way that suggested separation. Sloane followed Min Jae farther into the space, her focus still anchored in work mode. She had come here to finish a professional conversation, to close a gap, to make sure she had the visibility she needed to do her job properly. He set his jacket aside and stopped near the windows, the lights of Seoul stretching below them. "Some parts of my business don't operate through public channels," he said. "They exist inside the company, but they don't function the way most corporate structures do." Sloane's attention sharpened. That wasn't unusual on its own. But his tone was different, careful, deliberate. She studied him. "Outside standard disclosure. Yes. Outside corporate process. Yes." A brief pause followed. Sloane felt it register in her body before she fully named it. This was bigger than routine discretion. "So when I'm seeing inconsistencies," she said slowly, "I'm seeing the edge of that." "You're seeing what overlaps," Min Jae replied. "Not the full structure." Her gaze stayed on his. "That affects the narrative. It affects where the narrative can safely go." Sloane drew a quiet breath. "Your business has a parallel side," she said, "one that doesn't answer to the same rules." Min Jae held her eyes. "Some parts of this organization don't operate through contracts or standard corporate logic." That was the line. The room shifted for her, with recognition. Sloane's expression changed, subtle but real. "You're talking about organized groups," she said carefully. A pause. "Recognition. The Mafia?" The word sat between them. Min Jae's mouth curved slightly. "That's an old word," he said. "The kind people use when they want a simple story. What actually exists is more structured than that. More integrated. That's what people always say when it's close enough to feel normal," Sloane replied. Her voice stayed steady. her pulse did not. A beat passed. Sloane looked away for a second, toward the windows, then back to him. "That's not what I expected, to learn about my client," she said quietly. "I didn't expect to tell you," Min-jae replied. Another pause, short, heavy. Then he continued. "In that part of my world, being near me carries meaning," he said. "People assume things about anyone who has access to me outside formal settings." Sloane frowned slightly. "I'm here to do my job." "I know. Then why would that matter?" Min-jae's gaze didn't waver. "Because in my world, proximity isn't neutral," he said. "If you're seen with me in certain spaces, it suggests you matter to me." The word landed harder than she expected. Matter. "That's not how I operate," Sloane said. "I'm not part of your world. That doesn't stop it from assigning meaning," he replied. Sloane felt a flicker of irritation beneath her composure. "That's an assumption on their part. Yes, that's not something I control." "No." "But you do," she said. Min-jae studied her. "Control doesn't always prevent interpretation," he said. "Sometimes it only manages the consequences of it." Sloane absorbed that, not with fear, with recalibration. "So you're saying my being there made me visible in a way I didn't intend?" "Yes. And that visibility means something to people who don't separate business from personal." "Yes." The silence stretched. This time, Sloane didn't fill it. She let the weight of it settle. Min-jae turned slightly, moving toward the hall. "You need to understand how my world responds," he said. Not in theory. Sloane was still absorbing it when he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. "There's something you should see," he said. He unlocked the phone and turned it toward her. A video appeared. A quiet hotel hallway filled the screen. Sloane leaned in slightly. "That's my hotel," she said. "That's where I'm staying." Min-jae didn't respond. He let it play. Two men came into view at the far end of the corridor. They moved with purpose. Both were dressed in all black. They had their hands resting on weapons. Sloane felt her stomach tighten. They stopped outside her door. One of them checked the hall. The other produced a key card. The door opened. They went inside. Sloane's breath slowed, her focus narrowing on the screen. Minutes passed. The door opened again. The first man stepped out carrying her laptop bag. The second followed, scanning the hallway before they disappeared around the corner. Min-jae lowered the phone. The room felt different after that. Sloane straightened. "That wasn't random," she said. "No. I was targeted." "Yes." She looked at him. "How did you get this?" Min-jae's answer came easily. "I have access to things most people don't." That told her everything she needed to know. She turned back toward the windows for a moment, then faced him again. "They went in looking for leverage," she said. "They wanted something connected to me." "No. They wanted something connected to me," Min-jae corrected. Sloane nodded once. The reality of it settled. Her first instinct surfaced. "I'll move to another hotel," she said. "Somewhere more private." Min-jae didn't hesitate. "That won't change anything." She met his gaze. "It changes access. It doesn't change interest," he replied. "You've already been marked as someone close to me." That word hit hard. Close. Sloane exhaled slowly. "So what are you suggesting?" "You stay here," Min-jae said. "With me." The statement wasn't framed as a question. "This building is secure. My people are here. No one comes in without my knowledge." Sloane held his eyes. "No. I'm telling you it's necessary," Min-jae responded. The space between them felt charged with a different kind of tension now. Reality. Sloane looked back toward his phone, then at him again. "My team," she said. "My work." "That can continue," Min-jae replied. "They'll be protected." She considered that. Strategically. Her world had rules. So did his. Right now, his were the ones in play. "Fine. Temporary," Sloane said. "For as long as it takes," Min-jae replied. Another pause. Sloane gave a small nod. "Then we adjust," she said. Min-jae watched her closely. "You're adapting quickly. I don't have a choice." That earned a look from him that lingered longer than before. Not professional. Protective. "Your things will be retrieved," he said. Sloane's jaw tightened slightly. "They went into my space." "Yes," Min-jae replied. She met his gaze again. "Then they made a mistake." Min-jae's expression didn't soften. "They did." Morning light cut across the penthouse in clean lines. Sloane was already dressed, standing near the windows, watching the city without really seeing it. Her body carried the night in small ways, the way her shoulders stayed tight. the way her attention kept drifting to the quiet behind her. Min-jae entered without sound. He took her in with one look. "You didn't sleep much," he said. "Enough," she replied. He crossed the room and stopped a few feet away. "What happened last night means someone decided you could be used to reach me," Min-jae said. Sloane turned to face him. "They think I'm leverage?" she asked. "My weakness." The word was simple. "I work for you," Sloane said. "That's it." "They don't care," he replied. "They care that you matter to me. That makes you something they want to touch." Her jaw tightened. "I barely know you." "I know," Min-jae said. "It's perception." The space between them felt heavier, different from the night before. More personal. "In my world," he said, "when someone reaches for what's mine, they don't get a second chance to explain themselves." Sloane felt it. Not just the threat, the claim. "I'm not yours," Sloane said, her chest tightening despite herself. He studied her, dark eyes unreadable. Then calmly, "Marriage." The words were quiet. Sloane stared at him. For a heartbeat, she couldn't speak. "That's not happening," she said. The audacity of it made heat rise in her chest. "It keeps you untouchable," he replied. His voice was steady, too steady for what he was asking of her. "Absolutely not," she said. Sloane immediately went into fixer mode, pacing the room. "I can fix this. I do this for a living. There's always another option. Because this changes my life," she said. "My work, my privacy, my autonomy." "It keeps you alive," Min-jae said. "There are other ways," she shot back. "Private security, relocation, safe housing, controlled movement." Min-jae listened, watched her think. Something about it held his attention. Respect. Then he shook his head once. "In my world that means nothing," he said. "A clear message must be sent, and marriage is that message," Sloane said. She stopped pacing. Her options were narrowing. The logic was closing in. "It puts you beyond reach," he said. She turned away for a moment, pressing her palm lightly against the counter. Then she turned back. The air between them tightened. Sloane lifted her chin. "If I even consider this," she said, "I have conditions." Min-jae inclined his head slightly. "Speak. My work continues. You tell me everything. If there's danger, I want to know." "I'm involved in any decision that concerns me," she said. "Separate rooms. Whatever happens in public stops there." A pause. Agreed. "This has to look real," Min-jae said, as he stepped closer. Not into her space. Close enough. Close enough for her to register his cologne. Cedar mixed with something darker. "Danger. In public I will need to touch you," he said quietly. "A hand at your back. Kisses for cameras. Hand-holding. Close enough that no one doubts where you belong." His gaze darkened. Sloane's chest tightened. She hated that she noticed how close he was. Hated that part of her didn't want him to move. "It stays public," she said. "That line doesn't move in private." "For now," Min-jae said. She held his eyes. 3 months, she said. Another beat. "We announce it today," he said, already turning. "I'll write the press release," Sloane said. "Your world or not, I control the narrative." She didn't hesitate. He stopped and looked back at her. "You will be protected," he said quietly. Something in his tone sent heat curling low in her stomach. She pushed it down. Their eyes locked. "This is a contract," she said. "Nothing more." "Nothing more," he agreed. The marriage announcement was released through controlled channels, ensuring the message reached the right people. That night, Min-jae stepped out of the limousine in an impeccably tailored suit, the cut emphasizing his broad shoulders and the controlled authority he carried into any room. He turned and offered Sloane his hand. Sloane wore an emerald gown that flowed over her curves like water. Min-jae's hand settled at the small of her back, warm, even through the silk. The movement appeared casual, but possession lived beneath it. Cameras flashed. Conversations shifted. The entrance quieted, not from courtesy but from recalculation. They hadn't gone far when a man stepped into their path. His presence carried weight that didn't require. Introduction. Sloane recognized the name before Min-jae acknowledged him. Kang Jun-seok, head of the Kang Syndicate. Kang's eyes moved to Sloane first. "So this is her." The thought didn't need to be spoken to be understood. "Min-jae," Kang said evenly, "you make changes without warning." Min-jae stopped. "Some things don't require notice," Min-jae replied. Kang's gaze lingered on Sloane, assessing, testing. "So sudden," Kang said. "It invites curiosity." Min-jae's arm tightened at Sloane's waist. The movement was imperceptible. "We value privacy," he said. Nothing to be curious about, Sloane added. Silk over steel. Kang smiled faintly. Min-jae glanced at Sloane. Approval, unmistakable. Privacy, Kang repeated. The word carried unsaid meaning. Min-jae's expression darkened. A warning, clear and deliberate, without the need for words. Kang understood it. Well then. Congratulations. Kang stepped back into the crowd. Min-jae leaned close to Sloane's ear. You handled that well. The warmth of his breath brushed her skin. It's my job, she replied, her smile controlled. Next, a woman approached, elegantly dressed, diamonds catching the light, her designer gown chosen as carefully as her timing. Her eyes were sharp, calculating. Min-jae, she said smoothly. The announcement was quite a surprise. Her gaze flicked to Sloane. Perhaps, Min-jae said, before leaning in to kiss Sloane's temple. Light. Controlled, warm. Sloane froze for a heartbeat, then schooled her expression into ease. She leaned into him, playing her role, she told herself, even as her body betrayed the lie. The woman studied the gesture. Well, enjoy your evening. Her smile never reached her eyes. She stepped away. Min-jae drew Sloane closer. That man, Sloane said quietly. I take it he's not an acquaintance. No. Min-jae's voice remained low. Now he knows approaching you has consequences. She felt the weight of that word. Certainty. Min-jae surveyed the room. Business partners, associates, rivals, each recalibrating with the same conclusion. When he spoke again, it was close enough that only she could hear. The message has been sent, Min-jae said. Anyone who tries makes a choice they won't be allowed to reconsider. Her pulse jumped. She looked up at him. You don't warn, she said. I don't need to, Min-jae replied. The penthouse doors closed behind them. Silence pressed in, not empty, charged. Sloane slipped out of her heels and straightened, the emerald silk still warm against her skin. Her pulse hadn't slowed since Min-jae's hand settled at her back in front of Kang. She felt it again now, the memory. Min-jae set his jacket aside. He loosened his tie with deliberate care, eyes never leaving her. That room watched you, he said, and you didn't blink. I wasn't going to, Sloane replied. She turned. They stood several feet apart, too close, too far. Kang is dangerous, she said. The way he looked at me, it lingered. Min-jae closed the distance between them. No one touches you, he said. Final. Sloane's breath caught despite herself. That kind of certainty, she said quietly. It draws attention, so does pretending I don't have it. He was inches from her, close enough that she felt his heat, close enough that the line they'd drawn thinned. Min-jae lifted a hand. His knuckles brushed the edge of her jaw. Barely there. Sloane went still. Her pulse thundered. That, she said, her voice unsteady now, is not public. His thumb hovered near her mouth. Didn't touch. I know, he said. The restraint in his voice was worse than hunger. Sloane's hand rose on instinct. Her fingers closed around his wrist, not to stop him, to feel him. The contact snapped something taut between them. Min-jae's jaw tightened. His hand slid to her waist, firm, anchoring. Her back brushed the counter. She didn't move away. She tilted her chin up without meaning to. Their breaths mingled. Say the word, he murmured. Her lips parted. For half a second she almost did. Instead, his thumb pressed into her waist, just enough pressure to claim her attention, and then his mouth was on hers. Not slow, not searching. A kiss that landed like a decision already made. Her breath broke against his. Heat flared, sharp, immediate, before control snapped back into place. She caught the front of his jacket, fingers curling once, instinctive. Then she ended it. She pressed her forehead to his chest. The heat of him, the steadiness, the danger. This ends badly if we don't stop, she said. Min-jae exhaled through his nose. I know. His hand tightened once at her waist. Not permission, acknowledgement. Then he stepped back. The space he left was brutal. Her skin still buzzed where he'd touched her. Min-jae turned away first. You should sleep, he said. His voice was controlled again. Too controlled. Sloane nodded. She walked toward the hallway. At the doorway she paused. Min-jae. He looked at her. That look, unfiltered. This, she said, gesturing between them, is not part of the contract. No, he agreed. But it's happening anyway. Yes. They held each other's gaze for a long second. Then she went to her room. Sleep didn't come, for either of them. Weeks passed. Life settled into something that felt almost normal. Routine, familiar. Domestic Sloane kept consulting. Meetings, strategy sessions, fixing crisis. Some for Min Jae's company, some for other clients. The penthouse stopped feeling like a location. It became a shared space. Dinners happened without planning. Late nights stretched across the table between them. Files open, screens glowing, the city quiet beyond the glass. Min Jae would make morning coffee. She learned the cadence of his silences, when they meant focus, when they meant wait. Small things accumulated, domestic things. Evenings when he stayed up while she worked. Mornings when she found him already dressed, tie in hand. Sometimes she watched him nod it. Once he noticed. He didn't comment, neither did she. Publicly, the role held. Hand at her back, brief kisses that stopped feeling performative, looks that read as intimacy. His world adjusted around her presence without friction. Privately, something quieter took hold. Proximity became intentional. They chose the same rooms, sat closer on the couch. Once, late too late, she laughed. It slipped out of her, unguarded. Min Jae's posture softened at the sound. The marriage stopped feeling like an arrangement. It began to feel like something that was being chosen, and that was the difference. The day unraveled in pieces, meetings, calls, decisions, until Sloane stepped out of the building one late afternoon. Noise, movement, normal. Her driver wasn't at the curb, that registered too late. A hand slammed into her shoulder from behind, hard. She stumbled, heels skidding. Another grip caught her arm, pain shot up to her elbow. "Let go," she snapped, twisting, fighting for balance. One man yanked her closer. The other moved in fast, too close, too practiced. Sloane drove her elbow back hard. It connected. The man grunted but didn't release her. His grip tightened. She was being pulled toward the curb, toward a waiting car. Tires screeched. Black SUVs exploded into the space. 1, 2, 3. They slammed to a stop around them. Doors flew open. Men poured out, fast, armed, moving with precision. Shouts in Korean cut through the street. The man holding Sloane barely had time to turn. Min Jae was already there. He hit him from the side, ripping him away from Sloane with brutal force. The man slammed into the pavement. Min Jae grabbed him by the collar and hauled him up just long enough to drive him back down. Hard, controlled, furious. The second man lunged. Two of Min Jae's men intercepted him, slamming him against the SUV, wrenching his arms behind his back. The street erupted with motion. Phones came out. Sloane staggered back, heart pounding, lungs burning. Min Jae turned to her immediately. His hands were on her, not rough, checking. "Are you hurt?" he demanded. "I'm okay," she said, breathless. "I'm okay." Her hands shook. She hated that they did. Min Jae's jaw was tight. His eyes were lethal. He turned back to the men on the ground. "Take them," he said. His people dragged the men up. One struggled. They were shoved into one of the SUVs. Doors slammed. Engines revved. Just like that, the street began to return to something like normal. But Sloane knew better. Min Jae turned back to her. This time, his hands came to her arms. Firm, protective. "We're leaving," he said. She nodded. He guided her toward his SUV. Her adrenaline surged. Her body still shook. Inside the car, the world muted. Only then did Sloane realize how close she had come to danger. Her breath came out in a sharp exhale. Min Jae sat beside her. His gaze never left her face. "They won't try again," he said. "That problem has been eliminated." The certainty in his voice was confirmation. "You came for me," she said. "I will always come for you." For the first time, the contract felt like paper. For the first time, the protection felt personal, dangerously so. When they arrived at the penthouse, the quiet hit harder than the street had. Sloane stepped inside. Her hands were still shaking, not violently. Enough that Min Jae noticed. "Sit," he said gently. She sank onto the sofa, staring down at her forearm. The scrape was already darkening, skin torn where she'd been pulled. Min Jae crouched in front of her. He cleaned the wound carefully, his touch deliberate and precise. The sting made her flinch this time. "I'm sorry," he said. "For the pain, for all of it." The apology loosened something in her chest. She exhaled shakily. "Your world, the risk," she admitted. "I talk my way through danger for a living, not live it." He wrapped the bandage gently, securing it without pressure. Min Jae's hands stilled. He rested his forehead briefly against her knee. "Human, I failed you today," he said quietly. Sloane reached for him without thinking. Her fingers slid into his hair, holding him there. "You came," she said. "That matters." He lifted his head. "It shouldn't have happened at all." Silence stretched, heavy. "I can't build a life inside this," she admitted, waiting for danger, measuring exits. He nodded once. "I know." The admission carried weight. Min-jae rose and sat beside her, pulling her carefully into his chest. She went willingly, curling into the space he offered. His hand moved slowly along her back, grounding, protective, tender. "I don't want to be the reason you live afraid," he said. Her grip tightened on his shirt. 1 year later, the penthouse felt lived in. Sunlight spilled across the dining table, where half-finished coffee cups sat beside open files. The city beyond the glass moved at a gentler pace. Min-jae stood at the window. Life was different now, lighter, calmer. Most of the company's holdings were legitimate. The dangerous edges trimmed back, the shadows handed off. He no longer lived inside constant threat. Sloane crossed the room barefoot, slipping her arms around his waist from behind. "You're brooding," she said. "I was remembering." She smiled against his back. "That sounds dangerous." He turned, drawing her into him with easy familiarity. "This year," he said quietly, "you changed it." She tilted her head. "We changed it." They stood there for a moment, close, unguarded, settled in a way neither of them had been before. Min-jae reached into his pocket and drew out a velvet box. Sloane's breath caught. "When I asked you to marry me before," he said, "it was about protection." She nodded. "This time," he continued, "it's about choice." He knelt. The ring caught the light, elegant. For a moment Sloane couldn't speak. She looked at him, at the man who had stepped away from danger piece by piece, who had learned tenderness without surrendering strength. "Yes," she said softly. He rose and kissed her. Slow, thorough, certain, just the future, finally chosen. This was a story about protection turning into trust, and a love that had to be earned. Thanks for listening to Neon Obsidian Audio. If this story stayed with you, come back for more. I'll see you in the next one.